It's rare to see a small spin-off game meet expectations this comprehensively. Fun, short-lived, slightly repetitive, yet leaving us interested to know more, Eiyuden Chronicle Rising is exactly in line with the role it has to play. Releasing a companion game before the main game, in this case the upcoming Eiyuden Chronicle 100 Heroes, is certainly an unusual choice, especially given that Rising takes a very different approach to its JRPG sibling by swapping turn-based battles for a 2D action RPG format. Make no mistake though, it's worth playing for its own strengths. Our goal in Rising is to rebuild New Neviah, a town decimated by an earthquake. That same event also unearthed several ruins stacked with treasure, which is where we come in. Playing as the honorable scavenger CJ, our role in the reconstruction efforts is providing each resident with whichever materials they've requested. Just be aware this isn't a city building sim like Cities Skylines. Every location is predetermined and there's no fine tinkering, so don't expect anything too in-depth. New Neviah is not always the most exciting place to be, but there's an undeniable charm the small town presents as it grows. It's not an original premise, but there's an unfolding mystery that holds your attention. Progress is mapped through a stamp card system, earning another every time we help residents. Filling out your stamp book upgrades it to the next level, bringing more people to town and further opportunities. You'll need a few initially to obtain an explorer's license for the ruins, so it's slightly odd for CJ to get so invested in collecting stamps once you've done that, but seeing her so dedicated to rebuilding this town is rather sweet. Rising adopts a Metroidvania approach to exploration, blocking off certain areas until you've found a set ability. For example, CJ's double jump isn't available until you've improved her armor, the justification being that it's become lighter and less restrictive, letting her reach certain platforms. It's a steady system that rewards more thorough explorers, but doesn't hold back your ability to obtain resources. Naturally, these areas are also teeming with bog-standard monsters, and CJ is soon joined by two other party members. The young but determined acting mayor, Isha, and Guru, an anthropomorphic kangaroo mercenary who acts tough but hilariously caves to nearly every demand. You can swap between party members easily during exploration. Guru is your slow but heavy hitter, Isha uses magic for ranged attacks, and CJ offers a nice middle ground with her two pickaxes, so you'll need to frequently rotate between them. Eventually, equipable rune lenses become available that give your team weapon elemental damage, which is used both in exploration and exploiting enemy weaknesses. Initially, you can't do much beyond single button attacks, leaving combat feeling rather basic. New abilities are only unlocked upon improving weapons and armor, and unlike a lot of other RPGs, you don't need to keep selling your legendary weapons to random shopkeepers once you've got a better one. They're all upgraded through gradual improvements, assuming you've got the money and materials. It's unfortunate then that Rising locks simple moves like attacking upwards or downward spikes behind these upgrades. It's a strange choice that makes the early hours feel too straightforward when they could have benefited from a little more depth. Combat isn't just simplistic. On default difficulty, it's a cakewalk. Clearing out these ruins isn't especially challenging, and if you're after a tougher fight, hard mode is unfortunately locked until you've beaten the 12-hour campaign for the first time. Combat does open up later on, once you acquire these new moves and rune lenses, leaving some room to strategize. Pulling off combos also felt pretty damn satisfying, a feeling amplified by the slow motion sequences that accompany them. There's a rush that comes from rinsing tougher foes with a quick set of strikes, inflicting major damage in a matter of seconds. It's one area where the basic nature of combat is advantageous, seeing your party work in unison without any complicated inputs. It doesn't take much combat, resource gathering, and questing for New Neviah to become a thriving town once more, offering all the classic buildings you'd expect from a fantasy RPG. Inns, taverns, blacksmith services, all the usual sites are here. Smaller shops like the Apothecary are relegated to being unlocked through side missions found on a notice board in New Neviah's plaza, and thankfully these don't need long to complete. Quests don't usually ask for more than providing each resident the necessary materials, but there's a sense of pride in rebuilding. The results are immediately evident, and turning this town from a ruined mess to a thriving hub felt rewarding. That sentiment is nicely reflected in CJ's own personal growth, which sees her go from ambitious treasure hunter to someone who'd do anything for the town. New Nevia's growth is boosted by a lovely art direction, packed with vibrant environmental designs. Whether it's those beautiful trees of the Great Forest or the icy tundra known as Snow Peak, Natsume Atari has given clear attention to detail here, and that's a key part of its charm. Unfortunately, and not at all surprisingly, this mission structure quickly becomes repetitive, though the worst offenders are found in the side missions. Main quests are significantly varied, but if you plan on going that extra mile for this town, almost everything is a fetch quest for material gathering. This certainly makes sense from a story perspective. You can't exactly do much construction work when there's no resources, after all. But even with fast travel, continuously traveling between these ruins got tedious. Several of these require you to collect the exact same ore, meaning you'll have to keep exploring those same locations. Fortunately, the trading post often provides what's required, it's just not always cheap. Sure, these are optional quests, but ignoring them can lock out some important upgrades to your weapons and armor with the respective attack and defense boosts, placing you at a significant disadvantage in combat later on. But the biggest facilities you'll need are locked into main story missions, and if you're taking a moment to whack every rock, tree, and enemy you come across during exploration, you may already have the needed resources on you when taking on a request. Granted, there's a limit to what you can carry, but storage space can also be increased to a generous degree. Still, despite sweeping through everything before the final boss, Rising only takes 12 hours to complete, which isn't long for an RPG. You can bump that up to 15 hours when including post-game content, which adds more side quests for completing your stamp book. So while it may not be the longest adventure, crucially, the main story never felt dragged out, and everything progressed at a natural rate. Also, keep in mind that your party's story continues in 100 Heroes. CJ, Guru, Isha, and 4 other Rising characters all appear as protagonists. So expect a few loose threads, but it still reaches a satisfying conclusion. Eiyuden Chronicle Rising does exactly what any good companion game should do. Not only does this RPG set the stage nicely for the upcoming 100 Heroes, it's an enjoyable adventure that stands on its own merits. It's true that combat is a little basic and the optional fetch quests can become rather tedious, but thanks to the dynamic cast of characters, there's a great story worth exploring. Its campaign didn't last terribly long, but it inspires curiosity to see where this adventure goes next, and that was its main job. For more, check out our reviews of Triangle Strategy and Rune Factory 5, and for everything gaming, stay tuned to IGN.